Shut up and sit down.
Welcome back to the Tiki Sessions from Kon-Tiki Boat Bar here in Portrush. As always, Stuart Cullen from Rawee Board Company, and behind the bar, mixing the cocktails, Ash. What's the crack?
I'm all good, thank you, Stuart. I'm really delighted to have Sarah along here tonight. Sarah's a big celebrity in the area, so I'm really excited to have you in the bar. I've made Sarah's favourite cocktail tonight, which is an amaretto sour. I've made it with a mixture of, obviously amaretto, fresh lemon juice, a little bit of Angostura bitters and some egg white in there, so I hope you like it. As I say, I'm delighted to have you in the boat bar. When was the last time you'd be in the boat bar, Sarah?
The nostalgia, Ash, is incredible. It's fab to be in here. I am thinking 25 years, would that be right?
Wow.
Yeah.
No, maybe, definitely 20, but it is like a trip down memory lane. And for all of you who used to go to Kelly's back in the day, it's still here. Look at the bar.
It's amazing, and for me, it's such a shame because I think it's been sitting derelict for the last sort of 3-4 years, and I sort of spied an opportunity in the fact that, like, I love tiki, I love rum, I love tequila cocktails, and I really wanted to bring a sense of fun to the drink scene back in Portrush, and I'm so glad that people like yourself who have sort of enjoyed being in here over the years are back in. So yeah, delighted to have you along here tonight. So
well,
thanks
congratulations on this
Cheers.
exciting venture, and thank you for my amaretto sour.
Cool, thank you.
So Sarah, most people will know you as Northern Ireland's sweetheart, probably one of the best known presenters on television, whereas I know you as Sarah, and I think you're probably one of the only people that I can truly say have known me my entire life, and we go back 40 odd years, so we do probably, you know. So this is great for me because I love interviewing people that I know, and I love having a chat with people that have stories to tell. And both of us went to the same school together, and I remember back on my very first day of going to Dominican in Portstewart that I was very nervous, and you walked me into Dominican, which was great. But I saw on your Facebook today you put up a post about Dominican. What was that?
I did. It was quite a sad day, really, because, I went to Dominican. I can't remember walking you in.
You did, and I was very grateful for it.
Stuart's much younger than me.
Of course.
And what's our age difference? About 6 years, so maybe
Probably,
I was 6th year, and maybe we had to take in a first year because it was really daunting. But I loved school. I mean, I was school mad, and I know not everybody has that luxury or that same experience. And my sister Jennifer went to Dominican, and then, you know, fast forward a generation, and my own children went there, Jack and Evie. And tomorrow actually, is Evie's last day at Dominican. So she is leaving, and that's the end of we've no more babies to pass through the system.
But that's the thing about coming from Portstewart, is that Dominican always has that fond place in everybody's hearts, even if you don't go to Dominican, because it's such an iconic image on top of that cliff top. You know, it's great looking back at it, and everybody has memories from Dominican, where they went there or not. And a lot of people would have gone to Dominican for the drama festival, and you used to star on stage in some of the drama festivals, and there's some lovely old photographs. Was that how you first sort of got the bug for presenting, doing that, or?
I suppose so. I mean, even before that, even in St. Colum's Primary School, actually. And, you know, I have to say, first of all, yes, I went to Dominican, but we're spoiled in this area with amazing schools. And what I loved was the community spirit and the cross-community spirit that we had. Remember, I was going to school really, you know, I think I went to school in 1980 something or other. So, you know, things were a bit different back then. But we've always had fantastic schools. I went to St. Colum's in Portstewart, and we had a wonderful principal, John Corrigan.
Yes.
So he instilled, I loved music and dancing, but I had a bit of a wobble kind of mid-primary school where I had a bit of a run-in with a teacher that I didn't really like, and my confidence was knocked. And I used to think that I became very, very nervous and suffered a lot with stage fright. And he gradually, you know, I handed back all the musical instruments, didn't want to do it anymore, and thought, that's it, it's over. And he used to just, in those days, he lived around the corner, and he said, come on round and we'll play the piano a day. You know, all of those things that teachers back then did. He's like, I'm not letting her give up that love for that.
Sign of a great teacher.
And there was no pressure. It wasn't about the performance. It was about the love of the music. So definitely I think he started something, and then of course went to Dominican, where his lovely wife, Rosaline
yeah.
Corrigan, was the drama teacher. Both of them sadly no longer with us, but I'm sure many people listening to this now who were educated by either John or Rosaline will have the fondest memory and only high regard for what they did to nurture any little chink of talent. Even if you didn't have any talent, it was give it a go and enjoy the experience. And you know, a bit like team sports, being part of a choir, being part of a show, those memories I think stay with you for the rest of your life.
And that was the great thing about Dominican. It was a very sort of arty school, and you know, through the drama and through the music, it brought out people's confidence, and most people that go to Dominican come out with that confidence about them, if you know what I mean. And I remember doing the drama festival, and we were doing The Wizard of Oz. I was on stage and I was the wizard. I had tonsillitis and I had, like, the temperature was through the roof. I shouldn't have been on stage. I was wearing a white jumpsuit, which then, because under the lights and because I was so ill, became pretty much see-through. And the Corrigan's daughter, Brianna, who was the lead singer at the time of The Beautiful South, she was there judging it, so it was just like the worst night of my life. But I look back on it now with such fond memories, and even, you know, now whenever I meet my friends from school and stuff like that, we still talk about that night, and the drama festival was really good like that. So after Dominican, then you went on to university in Nottingham Trent.
I did.
And you did a broadcast course.
I did a broadcast journalism course. So,
brilliant.
Yeah, it was a case of sitting in the careers library in Dominican one day and wondering, you know, having to fill in the forms, what do I do next? And I'd been interested in teaching, law or journalism. Didn't really understand, you know, like you don't do, you think, oh, pick something. And I just remember picking up a prospectus for the Nottingham Trent University, and it was full of cameras and, you know, exciting things. And up until that point, there was no degree course at university if you wanted to be a journalist. Most of the time, you know, you went to the Tech or the College of Business in Belfast. You learned your shorthand and your typing. You went to the local paper and you came up that way. And there'd be many journalists that say that's the only way to do it. But when I picked up that prospectus, it was a course, and I just, you know, when something just feels right. But it was a bit of a test at the time. So, you know, we're talking over 20 years ago. And it was going to involve industry. Industry were going to be involved, and I was so lucky to have an honorary lecturer in Jon Snow from the Channel 4 News. Like,
one of the best
hero.
news presenters
well,
ever.
Incredible. Still, I mean, watched him every night all through the pandemic, and you know, he's still got it. And what a brilliant journalist, and what a, you know, a champion of the underdog, which I always love. So I applied for that course, but I was really lucky and really fortunate. And you know, you say that you were lucky, but I was definitely in the right place at the right time. This was a new course. It hadn't found the appropriate accreditation or approval. You know, was it academic enough to meet the university's criteria? And could it churn out journalists that could work in a newsroom? So I kind of signed up, and you hardly needed anything to get in. So even though I did okay in my A-levels, I just kind of got in, and there were 28 of us, and a lot of them have all gone on to work straight out of college, and
which is,
you know,
brilliant. And
a few people I see now, and Steve Dixon, he's on Sky News, and he was one of my classmates. So yeah, it just had you ready for work, which of course the vocational courses are now what you're doing in the Tech all the time.
Well, that's it, because
it's not rocket science.
You know, what you see now is, you know, we have students come on to our media courses, and they are very sort of adamant, even at 16 years old, is we want to do this course, we want to go to that uni. Why do you want to go to that uni? Because it's got industry connections and it's got a progression route, and even at 16 they're very aware of that. So it's great to see that sort of awareness that's coming, and you were probably, like you say, with a brand new course, and that was a phenomenal course that they had at Nottingham Trent. So through that course then you started your journey with the BBC, and I think you were in BBC Nottingham Trent, was it?
Well, basically alongside the course you did placements the whole way through. So BBC Radio Nottingham I did, and then East Midlands Today, which is the equivalent of Newsline. So you did sort of month stints at a time. And also Leicester Sound, which was the commercial radio station in Leicester. So yeah, I just started working in newsrooms, and I have to tell you this, I really wasn't very good. I mean, and you know, all of that imposter syndrome that I had way back in primary school came back in bucket loads. And you know, even going to university for me, I went from really, you know, being full of confidence to suddenly being that imposter again. I suppose the only person from Northern Ireland on a course, and at that stage the troubles were happening. And I remember John Snow taking a real interest in me because he was fascinated with the story in Northern Ireland. And I was saying to him at the time, oh, but you know, I live up in the Portstewart, it's absolutely beautiful, and I would never see anything.
There,
and I feel a wee bit like I've let you down because I have no stories to tell you. And then within 2 months of me being at university, the massive bomb went off in Coleraine in, is it 1992?
Yeah, and at the time I think that was the biggest car bomb in European history or something like that. It was huge.
Awful. And I remember getting a letter from my late dad, and I still have it, and he was talking about the smell of the smoke in the air, and I was just devastated. Oh, excuse me, touching the microphone. And the next time he came over to me and he said, your town, I am so sorry. And I thought, you're such a gent. How will you remember that I told you where I was from? And he looked it up, and it was the compassion that he showed was incredible.
Brilliant.
But yes, I started there, and that was the BBC. And then, also when I was at Dominican, I did a week's work experience at Radio Foil in Derry.
In Derry.
Got to work with, I'm a name dropper tonight, aren't I? I've just gone
Not
blank.
my hero, Jerry Anderson, was it?
Oh, well, I did.
No,
that wasn't what I was going to say, but so I answered Jerry's phones.
Brilliant.
And he
sure
was
that
incredible.
was exciting, kind of answering Jerry's phones.
It was interesting.
I'm sure it was.
And I, as a wee girl from Portstewart, and all the requests were for Dean Martin and this and the other, and I was like, well, who are all these people? But yes, very entertaining, and I could never tell whether we were serious or we weren't, but you know, the crack was absolutely 90.
Do you know what, Sarah, like one of the rationale behind like the Tiki Sessions for me was to show sort of local people that there's an alternative route. If you don't want to get into dentistry or lawyer, or you know, if you don't want to be that sort of vocational career choice, it's bringing people in who are entrepreneurs, who are going sort of off the beaten track a wee bit and have proven. So it's great to have you along to sort of, and I don't know if young people are going to watch this, but it'd be great to show them, to say that like there's local people who are punching way above their weight on the global scale, really.
But also there's no one path.
Yeah,
you know, you
totally.
can start out thinking I'd like this. Actually, the reality of a newsroom for me, somebody had advised me that I shouldn't do general broadcasting. I should focus on news. I really didn't have the hungriness for news that you needed, and I wasn't tough enough. You know, the fast turnover, fast pace, hard talking, I was too sensitive, really. I had many tears in the toilets when I was shouted at.
But yet you did end up the anchor of BBC Newsline, really. And what was it like, obviously, starting as a presenter on BBC Newsline, and as a female presenter back in those times, and quite a young female presenter whenever you first started there. You know, was that, you're saying, you know, there was many tears in the toilets. Did you learn to build up that tough skin and that front, or was that something that you struggled with?
Oh, I struggled with that a lot for a long time. But you know, the BBC Northern Ireland was a wonderful place, and is, you know, still. I haven't been there for quite some time now, but I've still got really good friends. There was a little cohort of us that we all started at the same time. It was just, I'd been in Radio Foil after university for 2 years. Fantastic. Ceasefire summers, heat wave. I came back from Nottingham going, I want to come home. I love home, peace, wonderful, bright future. And then after 2 years, transferred to Belfast. Massively scary. Big jump from making Jerry's tea and answering the phone to, you know, it really was the focus of the world's news. So we had the journalists and presenters and news teams from all over the world. 24/7 news coverage was just coming in. The troubles were still happening. The working on the build up to the Good Friday Agreement was, now I realise, such a privilege and an honour, but at the time it was massively daunting. So you would have the late Ian Paisley coming in one door, Jerry Adams coming in, another Senator George Mitchell coming in. Everybody was in, out, interviews, and you'd 1 hour between bulletins. Sometimes every half hour, what did they say? Get the top line, clip it. And in those days, we had razor blades and tape, and we stuck them together. Sometimes you were putting things in backwards. You've dropped a bit of tape. Oh my goodness, where's Paisley gone? So it was just the speed of it and the turnaround time. I found that because it was a ditherer, and was that the best line or was that the best line? And then the best advice I got was, nobody else knows what was said. You got that interview, so just don't worry about it. Get something out.
Yeah.
And then if you need to refresh and somebody says, there was a better line that you could have taken from him later. But, I look back now and I only realised this at the anniversary there recently of the Good Friday Agreement, the 25 years. I was on shift and I read the radio news bulletin that evening when the agreement had been signed. And my lovely daddy had recorded it on cassette at home, so it still exists.
Wow, that's class.
But he knew that the hand of history was on our shoulder.
That's it.
And I didn't, because I was very young,
Yeah.
so 22, 23 years old. The telly side of things, so I loved radio.
Yeah.
Radio was fantastic. I always wanted to stay on radio. And then one morning, somebody didn't turn in to read the television news at 6:30 in the morning, and I was literally thrust like a rabbit in front of the headlights. I wonder where that first bulletin was or is. And yeah, it was terrifying. I'm glad I didn't know.
Yeah.
I think if I'd have thought about it, so the imposter syndrome, which I have struggled with all my life, going 23 years old, I'm going to get found out now. Every stage you go, am I just lucky? Am I in the right place at the right time?
It's funny though, I think that imposter syndrome is really good at like exercising resilience, and like only now you can look back and say, right, well, I went through that, I can go through this kind of thing. And I think that resilience is a thing that everyone talks about in business an awful lot of time, and I think that with the benefit of hindsight, obviously it's great to look back and think, right, well, that was horrific, but I got through it.
Yeah.
And what else can we get
Could
through?
I do it now though?
Of course you could.
And you're talking about the Good Friday Agreement, but another story you covered was the Oma bombing. And I remember you telling me once that you had to read out the names of everybody. How was that? I'm sure that was an extremely hard thing to do.
Well, I'll tell you, the little cohort of people that all started at the same time, it was a good friend of mine, a producer, but at that stage we were all just journalists on the radio desk. She was getting married that day in the Sleeved Honoured, and we had such a job to get everybody cleared. First of all, to go on our hen night, which was fine, and then for us all to be cleared from duties to go to the wedding. We were at the wedding, her Louise was getting married that day, and the bomb went off, and there were an awful lot of people from Oma at the wedding. There was no mobile phone signal. The old pay phones in the lobby were just everybody queued out the door, and we all took a collective decision. So I'm sitting there, Tara Mills was there, other key people at the time. We were all in our finery, and Louise was standing on the dance floor going, I'm getting married, I can't go to work. And so we give, I think she had a special dispensation to continue with the wedding, but everybody else left, and we ended up working like a continuous 48 hours. What we were going through was nothing compared to everybody else, and the reporters that ended up going on the ground, the stories, I mean, horrendous, and needing to, do you do the story or do you help? The passing over the mobile phone to relatives so worried, and so it was a couple of, we all stayed in her wedding outfits for 48 hours, and just, it was the disbelief really, because there'd been such a happy, there'd been tensions, but it felt like everything was shattered, you know. And then, there was a very poignant moment where we read the names of all the victims, including the unborn, and
Very hard thing, like you say, for anybody involved in it to go through, but a hard thing for a journalist to deal with as well.
And I had become a mum myself around that time, so it was hard. But as I say, that was the job, and you did not let emotion show.
That's it, And then you moved on from the BBC, and you joined UTV.
Yes.
And you got your own show on UTV.
Yes.
And you started interviewing very, very famous people. And one of the stories that you told me that I'd love you to share is about the Garth Brooks announcement for the biggest concert.
I was wondering what he was going to say.
The biggest concert that never happened. And am I right in saying that you didn't know who you were going down to interview?
No. So there'd been a very late meeting called, we had a really tiny team for the magazine show, and there was some suggestion that there was a press conference down in Croke Park the following morning. We'd to be there 8:30 in the morning or something like that, and we didn't want to miss it, and it was a massive announcement, and I, was going, oh, who could this be, whatever. I'm not a massive country music fan, but there was a bit of a buzz that it could be that.
Yeah.
Imagine you remembering all of these things. I don't know where you're going with it. I don't know these questions. So, yeah, the next morning, lovely cameraman Marty Jordan and myself, we were intrigued. So, of course, we headed off with our lights and the camera, and we got down to Croke Park, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and then everybody started to get a little bit restless, and press conference packed with journalists from north and south of the border. The rumour started that it was Garth Brooks, and then there was a rumour that he'd been delayed, and unbelievably, like about 5 hours later, he walked onto the stage, and he'd flown over that day from the States in a private airplane, and there'd been a bird strike, and his cockpit windscreen had shattered.
Wow.
Oh, God, right.
So it was all very dramatic. And then I suddenly was going, flip, I don't know anything about Garth Brooks. There was that one song that Ronan did, and what would it go like? And they said, you've got a one-to-one with him.
Wow.
Which, I felt like, oh gosh, somebody else would give their right arm. But a gorgeous man, lovely man, had a great discussion, talked about everything, and he said, yes, coming to play Croke Park, it's going to be amazing. So the buzz about it was fantastic. But and as we know, there was a bit of a row with local residents and noise, and he pulled the plug.
Yeah.
So there you go. And we filled the whole programme with that interview, but it was a great interview.
It was a fantastic interview, and I remember, because whenever we interviewed Alan, who you know very well, he had interviewed Dolly Parton before, and my wife's a great country fan, and both times Alan with Dolly Parton, she's like, can you get me up to the BBC offices when Dolly's there? And then whenever she heard you had interviewed Garth Brooks, she's like, I can't believe Sarah's interviewed Garth Brooks, I
interviewed Dolly as well.
Did you interview Dolly as well?
But from Dollywood, we did a link up
nice.
to Dollywood.
Well, you weren't there. It was a.
What am I like? See, anything
I
Alan
love
Simpson
this.
can do.
You can do that as well. And how did you find Dolly?
Oh, amazing.
Funny, I was watching and listening to Joe Rogan's podcast with Miley Cyrus today, of all things. And
She's great. They're related, aren't they? Yeah.
Dolly Parton's her godmother.
Yeah.
And she was just like, she's now that she's gone through all that crazy phase, she's doing the Dolly phase. Anything she does, she goes, will Dolly kill me before I do this?
That's right. She's sort of lifting. She's been influenced that, and Stevie Nicks. I think you're hearing all of that.
Exactly.
I know Alan has interviewed Dolly many a time, and I was just really privileged, and it'll definitely be one of those ones that I remember forever. She'd been in a car accident.
All right. Okay.
And show must go on, and she said my name, and she said, Shara, and I thought,
That's my new
Parton
name.
saying your name.
she was so funny, and I thought she was doing one gig. It was her Blue Smoke tour, is that
Yeah.
right? So it was in the then Odyssey.
Yes, I was at that
Were
gig with
you?
my wife.
And she'll have been doing thousands of interviews that day, and she switched on, and she was interested in me. She loves Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
She loves her fans, and nothing was too much trouble. So she was really, we were saying, oh, everybody was very concerned. You'd been in a car accident. She went, Shara, when you have airbags like this, you don't need to worry about things like that.
Brilliant.
So, she was just really funny.
Yeah, she told a story at the gig about how she wrote "I Will Always Love You" that Whitney
love it,
Houston did,
love it.
and she goes, "I hate Whitney Houston," and this is in the Odyssey, and she goes, "I hate her every day that I walk to the bank to cash my check."
Sure.
So then, after UTV, then you set up with Camilla Bespoke Communications, and it's kind of frightening. Me and Ash were talking about this, and I've worked with you on Bespoke a lot of times.
Yeah.
But you teach sort of interview techniques, presenting techniques, and I'm going, okay, so tonight, even though I've known you all my life, we're about to have a chat with one of the best broadcasters in the country. So before you tell us about Bespoke, how do you think we're doing as presenters? Because we aren't presenters, you know. Ash is a barman and I'm usually behind a camera, you know.
Look, what do I know about presenting? And actually, when I went to UTV, that was a big change, because you see, when you're a newsreader, there was definitely the news voice came on and very serious, and I'd always been told I needed to frown a little more to make my voice deeper. Because at the start, you did ask me about women, and the women had to be a little more serious, so I couldn't sound like a little girl.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work on the television, it works on the radio, but you can't look at people like that. So when I moved to UTV, I found it really different. When you're in the news as well, everybody kind of leaves you alone. It's like that kind of, she's a newsreader, we'll not bother her. But when you go into the other arena, everybody wants to know about your life, they want to know about your business. But what you're doing, which is so brilliant, and it took me ages to move from, everybody was saying, you're too stilted, you're still reading the news. I did the news for 17 years.
Yeah.
And I found it, well, Dolly, sorry you've been in a car accident. And then you nodded. You know, what you do is you have a conversation and you have a chat. And the best interviews are a conversation and a chat where you don't know everything that you're going to ask before, and you listen for the little nuggets that you think, I didn't know that. Because if you know everything from before, then everybody else does too. So you're always trying to get that new thing.
You see, that's the thing that Alan actually said to us. Alan said that he had never interviewed anybody in his life. He always had a chat. And that actually sat with me, because one of the things Ash and myself talked about, because Ash phoned me one night and says, listen, can I have a chat with you? I was like, yeah. And he told me about the idea. And we just sort of was like, right, okay, so tell me about it. And he was like, 3 people sat around a bar, having a couple of drinks, having a chat. And I'm like, and you know me, I'm the most informal person in the world. And I'm like sitting at a bar, having a drink, having a chat. Sounds great, count me in.
Yeah, you forget that all of this
Oh,
is here.
everything else
It's
is
lovely, and
behind
there's no, for me anyway, as a
It's lovely.
bartender,
I've
it's
got
the
an
most...
amaretto sour. I never had this on the news.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Good evening.
Yeah, this is the new news. We'll start reading off an barbecue. I need to frown more when I'm doing it, though. That's the only thing. But no, it's so good. It's so good that, like for me, people's barriers drop down, and it's lovely to hear your stories about the North Coast. And for me, like the remit of getting people on Tiki Sessions is, are they interesting? Are they a local business owner? Are they an influencer? And critically for me, would you like to have a pint with them, or would you like to have a drink with them? So
Shall I leave?
No, we're all good. You're like, you've been top of the list for a while, so
Oh,
we've plucked up the courage to ask you, so it's been great.
So tell us a bit about Bespoke then.
Yeah, so I decided after UTV that I wanted to do something a little different. So I've always lived up on the North Coast, absolutely love it, but I'd been trundling back and forth up and down the road every day for 20 years almost at that point. And, you know, life gets in the way, and, you know, you've got kids and you've got family and you've other things that you want to do. And I'd worked from such a young age, I thought, what else could I do? So I had the choice then, you know, do I want to go on to the news, or shall I do something different? And, you know, that's why I say to loads of people out there is there are always other opportunities. So I thought I'd start a business, and I didn't know how to start a business. In fact, I didn't even think it was a business. I knew I could do some media training for people. I loved working with charities in the voluntary sector. And, you know, I'd done a lot of work with the Alzheimer's Society and Tiny Life, and I did a slot every Thursday night on BBC Newsline called Family Focus, and it was really to target the 22 to 44-year-olds who weren't watching the news. So it was not my idea to do Family Focus, it was a BBC marketing tool really, because we needed to be doing things that families were interested in. But it was my job every week to come up with an issue. So it wasn't exactly news, but it was to be topical. And I kept, you know, thinking, right, so care homes, 11 plus, living with a child with autism, all of these things started, and it was the charities that I was working with all the time. And every single time I'd say, that's great, but could you get me a case study? Could you get me a family? And then I realized, oh my goodness, all of these people were having to talk about their really personal things. In order to benefit others going through the same thing, you have to put yourself out there and you have to tell your story. But I wanted them to feel that they could trust the experience, that they wouldn't regret it, they wouldn't be terrified of it, and they wouldn't fear the judgment from other people if they've, you know, become emotional talking about it or whatever. So that's where I started. I was very, very fortunate then to meet my business partner, Camilla Long, who I didn't know from Adam. And people find that really hard to believe, but it turns out we were just living a couple of miles down the road for
And
each
you're
other.
such a perfect fit for each other as well.
Well, we're very different.
You're
but
very
we're,
different, but
yeah.
you're very similar as
And I
well,
think
if you know what I mean.
that's- so we met up, and it was Camilla had the business idea. I had lots of contacts, and she knew how to do training, and she was organised, and I wasn't. So, like, what do you mean? What would a media training course look like? How many hours? How do you fill it? Where do you do it? How do you feed them? So all of this was a whole new world to me from somebody who clocked in, clocked out in the media every day. So we started there, and then presentation skills was another thing that somebody had come to me, a brilliant company called Learning Pool, an e-learning company in Derry, doing fantastically well. And, their top guy, Paul McIlvany, and his wife Louise, they run a brilliant company.
Yeah.
And they've always looked at, could you come in and work with our sales team on their presentation pitches? We're having to pitch all over the world, and they just need a bit of smoothing. And I said, I don't think, what do you mean, like, what? So I left it for a year, and then Paul came back, and they became our first client. And then suddenly we were putting through all of their people. And I was training one of their team today.
Brilliant.
And that's 5-6 years ago. But we've evolved, and we keep evolving. So, it's not just media training and presentation skills anymore. It has entered the whole area of resilience, leadership development, confidence. So, because people would struggle public speaking or feeling nervous on camera, or wanted to your new business, you want to project yourselves well on camera, they would come to me for that. But it's all tied up with how you feel about yourself and the resilience that you have, and being able to be bold and being able to push yourself out of the comfort zone and stop fearing judgment from others, because as we know, haters going to hate.
Yeah.
And it's probably only one person who's jealous.
Well, I remember working with you one day, and we were up in Belfast, and there was a girl, and you gave them a task to talk about themselves and talk about what they do for a job. And I think it took us 6 or 7 takes with this girl. She just, and it was just me, Sarah talking to her, me behind the camera. And this poor girl couldn't get it out, even just in front of the two of us. She was so nervous. And you worked with her that day, and that afternoon she did it. And then she burst into tears, and we were like, oh. But they were tears of joy. She was like, I can't believe I've been able to do that.
Yeah.
And, for us, that was a very simple thing that she'd done, but for her, that was a massive thing. And you brought that out on her.
Well, just today I was working with someone on a resilience course, and they just said afterwards, I found my voice.
Wow.
And it wasn't to be interviewed, it wasn't to give a keynote speech, it was to stand up for herself in the office and say, I'm not going to take that anymore.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I like it, at the fear of mentioning another buzzword, like when I'm teaching the hospitality kids, like for me it's empathy, and somebody who's good at hospitality is really empathetic, and for me you are, and people in the North Coast have a real high degree of empathy. And if you go in like being Sarah Travers, who you are, basically she's going to be intimidated. But if you go in as you normally do and make her feel comfortable and bring the best out in her, that's when you actually see results. So fair, like.
Well, do you know, I can be a witch at times as well. But, I just want people to feel safe and secure. I think it's awful to feel intimidated. It's awful to feel bullied and under pressure. It's different if you're in a certain job, I suppose, where you have to be held to account. But the majority of people that come through to me, I don't tend to media train the top politicians and the top, I'm not going to ever media train Boris Johnson.
No. And it would be a miss tonight, because both of us are here, if we didn't talk about your dad.
Yeah.
And I have a great memory of Ian. So whenever we were growing up, my dad and your dad were best mates, and I knew your dad as Uncle Ian. And I have a great memory of a barbecue at my parents' house. And we were all kicking around Ian's feet, and Ian was cooking the barbecue.
With a gas mask
With
on,
a gas mask
remember.
on as well. And we have I have a
I
photograph.
wonder
of
where I
it.
get the
Hell of a
performance
barbecue.
from.
Yeah, it was a hell of a barbecue. And we were all running around his feet and annoying him as any adult would have been. And he says, away you go and walk to the bar mouth. Now, I would have been about 5.
Not even, Stuart. You were probably 3 or 4.
And about an hour later, well, not an hour later, about 20 minutes later, all the adults realised there was no kids about.
Yeah.
There must have been about 6 of us. And they're like, where are the kids? And Ian says, I told them to go to the bar mouth.
And anything my dad told me to do, I did. So I
Yeah.
marched you all. I was the oldest, and I marched you all to the bar mouth, and then ended up having to carry you and all of them were clear back.
Because I couldn't walk
Yeah.
that far because I was so young. So yeah, there's many stories about Ian we could tell. And then Sarah as well, just to finish up, I've noticed recently you've taken up swimming in the sea.
Yeah, and that's been my little lockdown
Brilliant.
thing. I have become the dry rober, for the right reasons. For
Yes,
the right
you're not
reasons.
out
Actually,
walking around Tesco's
well,
wearing it.
you know,
Are we at a
each
level?
to their own.
Excuse me. Are we at a level to say that other dry robes,
Exist.
other
I don't
Yes,
even-
there are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll soon be
Oh,
Rawee
yes.
dry robes, but
yeah, exactly.
until we get to that stage.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, no, it's been fab. So I'd always loved the sea. I mean, you remember my
Yeah.
dad had a boat and was brought up in the sea, massive respect for the sea, always swam, loved it. And then, but I would have been a fair weather swimmer, so I would have gone in from about June and then stopped in about September. And I just kept going last year. And then I kept going and I kept going again. And I thought, you know what, it's not. It's actually, so what is it now, May? I don't know when this is going out, but this is May and it's as cold as it's ever been.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, Christmas Day was fantastic and my daughter Evie came in with me on Christmas Day and it's just been fab during the pandemic. To throw yourself in the morning before you start the Zooms, because we've had to change everything we do from face to face as well to virtual training. And yeah, it's a reboot and really good for the system and a wee bit bold.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And it is, like Ash and myself both surf and bodyboard and stuff like that. And, there are days that you're like, oh God, it's horrible out there. I don't want to go out. Yeah. And if you push yourself to go out, you never come out feeling worse than you do when you go in. You always come out feeling alive. And even on those coldest days, I love that burn that you feel whenever you come out. Your skin starts almost burning when you come out.
Yeah.
And for me, I got back into surfing during the lockdown, but I got back into it purely for stress reasons. And it's a phenomenal stress relief going into the ocean. So it is, even if you're only in for 5 minutes.
Oh, and that's all it is at the minute, really. But it's getting better.
Totally, and it's slightly getting warm. I was in yesterday, and
Is it
like
getting warm?
for
I haven't
me,
been in
like
this
I've been doing it for about 5 years now, and like I haven't had a cold in 5 years. The health benefits of open water swimming, like obviously
No,
do it
neither have I.
and check for riptides, or anything, probably say as a
Yeah.
responsible thing, but
Yeah.
it's such a good thing for mental health, for your immune system, for your actual general well-being. Like I love it, and it's so popular now.
Yeah.
And I wish that
There's
I don't
such
know
a
if
great
it's,
community around, and you
Yeah.
keep bumping into people, and we
brilliant.
all look as, oh, you're as crazy as me, and then the people will walk past and go, you're bad. It's just lovely, and I'm not in the menopausal mermaids or anything like that.
I wasn't going to say
But it's the whole community thing with them. They've the
that's great.
flasks and the
I would love to see, like, I don't remember the pool at, what is the Shanty now? And like in Portstewart where they had the open water pools, like the tidal pools. How good would it be to see those coming
I remember
back?
those. So that used to be where the Shanty is now, was the Coke Beach Club.
Coca-Cola Beach Club, yeah.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I had great summers there. There was
it's
a roller
fantastic.
disco in the Shanty. Bring back the roller disco. There used to be a roller disco in St Joseph's Hall in Portstewart as
sure,
well.
yeah.
And then there were little boats on those pools, and we used to have swimming races and boating races, and the big green, we'd play in rounders.
That was just
How good would that be for
Nostalgia.
get our kids off screens and go and actually learn to swim in the outdoors? And
You know, is it the insurance or what? I don't know, but
We could start a movement
it was
here
so
now.
good. We
Yeah.
had such fun.
brilliant.
That's their memory of
Well,
it.
listen, Sarah, we have been absolutely delighted to have you on tonight. Like I say, I've known you for forever. Ash knows of you more than knows
Yeah.
you,
It's
if you
lovely
know
to
what I
you.
mean.
And you.
And he was quite excited about meeting you tonight. And like we say, you've been top of our list to get on since we started
Oh, for
these.
goodness sake.
And we just want to say thank you so much, and we wish you all the best for everything with Bespoke over the next year.
Thank you so much, and thank you, and good luck with your venture too, because this is fab.
Cool.
Thank you very
The
much.
drink's really nice.
I'll see you here soon.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.